my congressional district in the northwest part of the state of Illinois has 3 international airports and more than a dozen general aviation facilities. So I certainly appreciate all the witnesses here today spending time with us and answering some of our questions. I'm going to start with Mr. Bleiweiss. You mentioned the economic impact of airports on smaller communities. If you could go into a little more detail on that, that would be helpful.
Thank you. I'm happy to. Airports or communities have to generate economic vitality, and one way that most companies look for to build up communities is with air service or by being able to bring companies in to those communities to generate jobs. So in Asheville, for example, again, 1,700 jobs are based not necessarily at the airport. The airport only has 450, 460 some odd jobs. But it's the influence of everything else that seeps into the community by doing so. We have been told a number of times when businesses are looking to expand or move to Western North Carolina, one of the first questions they're asked is, what kind of air service do you have, and what's the ability to get in new air service from the airlines? The unfortunate part that we have to deal with as smaller communities and smaller airports is, again, there's limited air service. There are 4 legacy carriers carrying almost 85% of the traffic in this country. They're looking at more of the bigger hubs. They're looking at airports as feeders, but they also don't provide a lot of good service to those feeders or for those hubs. So it's a limited about of how much capacity an airport will take. The growth that we have had in Asheville has to do with the ultra-low-cost carriers. They're the ones that are bringing our travelers to our communities, but those are also the type of airlines that businesses are not looking to use when they are growing the community employment base.
So just as a follow-up to that, and maybe this is probably broad, and maybe I'm get myself in trouble for asking it this broadly, but what additional resources can Congress provide to help smaller airports flourish?
I think, again, looking at the modernized or uncapped PFC helps the dollars flow from the larger airports down to smaller airports to expand their facilities. But also, again, it's touched on some of my things with the regulation of FAA. There are ways for airports to incentivize airlines to come into the communities. But the way that the FAA is looking at those rules and procedures limits what we can do. There's no reason why an airport shouldn't. If they are an economic vitality to that community, there's no reason why they should not be able to put some of their revenue dollars into incentivizing all airlines that want to serve and bring in additional service to those communities. And right now, we can't do that. There's limiting factors when even in our chambers or our economic development communities or partners in our small communities want to attract airlines. Technically, right now, we're not even allowed to sit in on those conversations and guide our communities to what service that airport needs or what service the community needs. Those are some of the restrictions that the FAA should loosen up on and let us do our business as a private enterprise.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. McNamee, I was in your county with Congresswoman Brownlee last summer, and it is lovely there. I want to ask you, you mentioned the Small Community Air Service Development Program. In addition to the infrastructure needs our airports face, attracting and maintaining commercial air service can be a real challenge. Can you talk a little bit more about how communities use the program and what additional flexibility you would like to see?
Additional flexibility. So we are currently, we have in hand a Small Community Air Service Development Grant in the amount of $500,000 at Oxnard Airport. And we lost air service in 2010. That really was the airlines increasing the fares to the point where the Navy, we have a large Navy base there in Ventura County, which made up about 1/3 of our customers, stopped using the service. And then from there, the fares got even higher for the local businesses and the business community traveling, and it basically killed the service. And so we've been trying to restore air service ever since. Even with that grant package in hand and great local community support, including funding, we've got about $1 million package. That has not been enough to incentivize some of those regional carriers. We don't have historical data to our strongest market, which would be the Bay Area. We have derived data based on traveling passengers, zip codes, things like that. So we know who's traveling out of LAX and Burbank instead of Oxnard. the program is a very good program. You know, it used to be funded at a much higher level. I think it's currently at $6 million a year. More funding would be nice to have for those small communities. They can definitely take advantage of it. In terms of flexibility, as Lou, my colleague next door here, mentioned, you know, we're often, our hands are tied in how we can exercise those programs. And so, for instance, we have a relatively strong reserve fund in our enterprise fund at the airport, but we're not allowed to spend airport money as part of that package for the grant. We have to go out and find it from outside sources, which fortunately we're able to do, but not all airports are in that position.
All right, thank you, Mr. McNamee. I've exhausted my time. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our panelists.